Hello, sixth graders. These are the directions for Monday, October 12th and Tuesday, October 13th in class activities. So I'm going to click right here on the in class. Neolithic period is what we're going to be talking about. Last class, we talked about the Paleolithic period. We talked about how they made fire or learned how to use fire to their advantage to be able to cook for light, for heat, and then for protection as well. So we talked about that. We watched the video. If you weren't in class or want to review that, you can always go back and look at the last in-class post. So this one is Monday and Tuesday's post. As you can see, we're going to be taking notes again, very similar to what we took last time, setup-wise. If you do not have the packet, then you'll find it on page 2 right down here in the packet. Here's the video that talks about the birth of farming that we will be watching in class as well. So we're going to start with taking notes, but I also wanted to point out that if you want to read over the information that's in the textbook, I have posted the pages, page 13, 14, and 15 that we are going over in class. For the sake of this demonstration and instruction, I am going to pull up under Resources our early human civilization slideshow, and that's what I use in class to go over. And as you know, in class, when we're taking notes while we're reading and looking at the information from the textbook, from there we always are able to see what the notes are. So feel free to go through this after class as a nice review. All right, so we are at our notes, and when we look at our notes, we want to think about location. So where on the globe is this group of people and this period located? Where are they found? And then we look at place. So where specifically, what do they have that makes them unique? Region, what do they have that's in common? So here again, we want to find that definition for Neolithic. Then we're looking at movement. How did they get from one place to another? We talked about nomads. With the Paleolithic people, are the Neolithic people the same? If they're not, why not? And then we look at how they interact with their environment. Again, it's not going to be in that order, but those are the areas that we're looking to find while we're reading. In our textbook on page 13, we start with the Neolithic times. After the last ice age ended, people began to change their way of life. They began to domesticate. Domesticate is a major word that you'll need to know, very important. It means to tame animals and plants for human use. Animals provided meat, milk, and wool. They also carried goods and pulled carts. So we can see down here in our notes, domesticate is one of our words, and that means to tame animals and plants for human use. As we keep going, in addition, people also learned how to grow food. For the first time, people could stay in one place to grow grains and vegetables. Gradually, farming replaced hunting and gathering. This change in the way people lived marked the beginning of the Neolithic Age, or New Stone Age, which began about 8,000 BC and lasted until about 4,000 BC. So if you do your math, that is about 4,000 years. So right here's the Neolithic New Stone Age. So the old Paleolithic was the old Stone Age. That happened first. This is the New Stone Age. So why was farming important? Historians call the change in Neolithic age the farming revolution. The word revolution refers to change that greatly affected many areas of life. Some historians consider the farming revolution the most important event in human history. Farming did not begin in one region and spread. People in different parts of the world discovered how to grow crops at about the same time. In Asia, people grew wheat, barley, rice, soybean, and a grain called millet. In Mexico, farmers grew corn, squash, and potatoes. In Africa, they grew millet and a grain called sorghum. As you can see in our notes right here, domesticate, tame animals and plants for human use was considered that farming revolution. And then as we continue to go on, we can see Asia, they had wheat, barley, and rice, soybean, and grain. In Mexico, they had squash. The corn is what you need to fill in, along with potatoes. And then in Africa, they had sorghum, which was a type of grain. As we continue reading on page 14, the growth of villages. People who farmed could settle in one place. Herders remained nomadic and drove their animals wherever they could find grazing land. Farmers, however, had to stay close to their fields to water the plants, keep hungry animals away, and harvest their crops. They began to live in villages where they built permanent homes. As you can see in your notes, farmers watered plants, fed animals, and then villages, permanent homes made of mud, brick houses. During the Neolithic Age, villages were started in Europe, India, Egypt, China, and Mexico. The earliest known communities have been found in the Middle East. Jericho is one of the oldest. Okay. We find some in Neolithic communities such as Turkey, present-day Turkey. Little bit remains, but it was home to some 6,000 people between the years 6,700 BC and 5,700 BC. They lived in simple mud brick houses that were packed tightly together and decorated inside with wall paintings. So instead of cave paintings, they actually had permanent homes so they could paint on their walls. They used other buildings as places of worship. Along with farming, the people hunted, they raised sheep and goats, and ate fish and bird eggs from nearby marshes. So here in our notes we have wall paintings, and some of them were religious buildings, so wall paintings, and then they raised sheep and goats and ate fish and bird eggs. Moving on to page 15, the benefit of a settled life. The shift to settled life brought Neolithic people greater security than they had ever known. Steady food supplies meant healthy, growing populations. With a bigger population, there were more workers to produce bigger crop. Because villagers produced more than enough to eat, so they had extra food, they began to trade their extra foodstuffs. They traded with people in their own communities and also with people who lived in other areas. People began to practice specialization or the development of different kinds of jobs. Because not everyone was needed for farming, some people had the time to develop other types of skills. They made pottery from clay to store their grain and other foods. They used plant fibers to make mats and to weave cloth. These craft people, like farmers, also took part in trade. They exchanged the things they made for goods they did not have. And as you can see in our notes, we can see down here specialization, which is a development of jobs. They had pottery, they would weave cloth, mats for plants, and then we have that tool maker down at the bottom. Another thing we can add in is that it was a bigger, or you could use the word larger, population. In late Neolithic times, people continued to make advances. Tool makers created better farming tools such as the sickle or cutting grain. In some places, people began to work with metals. At first, they used copper. They heated rock to melt the copper inside and then poured it into molds for tools and weapons. After 4000 BC, craftspeople in Western Asia mixed copper and tin to form bronze. Bronze was harder and longer lasting than copper. It became widely used between 3000 BC and 1200 BC, the period known as the Bronze Age. So again, Neolithic people are still living in the Stone Age, again, that new Stone Age, but they're moving into finding new items like copper and bronze to make their tools out of. So this is at the end of the new Stone Age. We then start the Bronze Age. To fill in our notes up at the top, the location, where were these people located? In Europe, Central Africa, Mexico, South America, and then South Asia. And in our class, we looked at the chart on page 14. So those of you that are home or reviewing this, I would suggest that you open up that page 14 document and you really take a good look at the comparison, because that will definitely help you with your homework that you are assigned after the in-class activities. So again, comparing the Neolithic and Paleolithic ages, there's a chart on page 14 that compares the two. And it looks at the arts and crafts. It looks at how they obtained food or how they gathered food, got food. It looks at how the humans adapted to their environment. And it looks at the job or the role of the men and women. That's what you need to know about the Neolithic time period. Thank you for listening.